Hey, Pete here for Studio Live today, and in this episode 5, the final episode of my EP deconstruction, we are on the homeward stretch, literally, because we are going to have a look at the song Home, which is the 4th track on the EP Recoil. Now, unlike the last track, which I admitted right up front was probably my least favourite on the EP, this one would probably be my favourite. It was actually the last song that I wrote, and it wasn't originally going to be on the EP. I had 4 songs originally to go on there, and as I was recording the 4th song, it just wasn't coming together, wasn't going to be finished in time, so I kind of wrote this one in about a day, and then went, yeah, I kind of like that one better, and finished it up again in about 2 days, recorded it, and it is what it is now. So what I wanted to do first of all on this one is show you the original recording. So in the second video about the first track, In Time, at the end of that one I showed you what the original sounded like and compared that to the finished product. But this time let's start with the original track to begin with. So this is the guitar part. So I've got sort of 4 tracks here of guitars that I'm playing along and 1 of piano, and this is where I was laying down the idea, getting the hook, getting the riff right. So that sounded a bit like this. See me working out the piano part there, getting it wrong again. Let's just turn that piano off for a minute. So that's it. So that was just sort of me playing through the whole song, sort of working out what it would sound like. I think the piano eventually sounded okay. No, I was still working through it. So this was sort of my idea pad. So it had sort of 3 guitar tracks, a bass track. I think this one was actually a bass guitar, if we play that. Yep. And they're all just using the audio recorder, so I hadn't worried about too many settings or anything. I literally just plugged in my microphone, or plugged in the guitar directly through my interface, and just started recording and getting ideas down. And that really formed the basis of what became this song over here. So let's open the final mix. And if we have a very quick listen, you'll hear that it sounds a little bit similar. So there's that sort of guitar and bass riff. The piano, I eventually realised that I should only bring that in later. So that sounds like this when it comes in. Long time for now I'm done. And thankfully that sounds a little bit better than the original one. So we've got the guitars, we've got the bass there. You can see my original attempt at guitars are up there. We've got... I keep doing that, don't I? I keep moving the audio. We've got the lead guitar that kicks in there. We've got a ukulele part in this one, which is a bit exciting. Bass, as I mentioned, and piano. We've then got our vocals. And you'll notice that there's 2 lead vocals. One, it's a doubled vocal. So we've got one that's at a higher volume and one that just sort of sits underneath. We've got a little bit of background vocal there. And then we've got our drums. So it's the return of Mason, the drummer, in this track to play a little bit of laid back country groove drums for this track. So let's go through and take a look at each of these tracks. So we'll start with the guitars. Fairly similar sort of guitars for the acoustics that we've had in the other ones. We've got an optimizing performance cameo here. Good old optimizing performance here in Garage. I should do a video on that one day of why optimizing performance happens, and well, not what you can do to avoid it. You can't do anything to avoid it. It does actually help. Anyway, let's go in and have a look at these guitars. So these 2 guitars, again, it's a left and a right guitar. This one's panned hard right. This one's panned hard left. Let's look at the plugins and EQ. They've got a compressor, track reverb, visual EQ. So you notice that I've used a little bit of plugins. I've used some plugins across the tracks on this EP, but not gone nuts with it. Because it is a bit more of an acoustic-y sounding EP, it's not got a whole lot of processing on many of the tracks. So the guitar there's just got the bottom end pushed down a little bit, a little carve out of the middle, and then the treble's been boosted a little bit for that guitar, and probably quite similar on this guitar as well, except again we've got that mid-range boosted. So we've just done a little bit of complementary EQ to get the guitars to sit nicely together, a little bit of reverb, a little bit of compression on there. Nothing significant. And as I've mentioned, if you're going through these videos and going, why is all of the processing on each individual track? That's probably one of my bugbears of GarageBand. If there was one feature that I would ask for, if GarageBand was being reviewed or updated, it would be to have at least one or two channels of a bus that I could send things to. So to have a reverb bus or a delay bus to be able to actually send a little bit of each track to would be great. You've kind of got it with the master delay and the master echo and master reverb, but it would be nice to just have something with complete control where you could just have one track that was just an effects track you could send to. Anyway, I'll jump off that rant for now. So that's our rhythm guitars. We've then got a lead guitar here that comes in down the track, and we'll listen to what that sounds like. Big mistake, now I'm done. So that just adds a little bit of variety to the song. So as we get into sort of that second part of the verse, we've got that lead instrument there. Let's look at the processing on that one. Again, very similar. Compressor, track reverb, and EQ. And that one's EQ'd to bring the treble down. When I recorded that, it sounded very twangy, and I wanted it to be a bit twangy, but not crazy twangy. So I pushed the mids up a little bit and brought down the treble just to remove that twanginess. And in fact, something I haven't done is actually shown or played the difference that makes. So let's just go out here. And if we solo that instrument again and play, and come back to our processing. So if I come back to the EQ, so what you can probably hear there is that when I sort of bring it back to level or even boost the treble, yeah, it just sort of cuts through the mix, but not in a good way. So it sounded a little bit sort of twangy and thin on top. So I just wanted to remove some of that because we've also got ourselves a ukulele track here. So let's have a listen to that. We'll go back to the start of that section and hit play. And the processing on our ukulele, we are actually boosting the treble. So because the ukulele didn't have a whole lot of volume, unlike the guitar, we actually wanted to boost that up. And how they sound together, if we'll just jump out of that and come back here. So, and in the mix. I'm done, and now I'm on my way home. So they just complement each other. The guitar then continues on here. We bring the ukulele back. All my things. Now I'm on. As we head towards the end of the track, and then as we get right towards the end, not that far. So, and how that sounds in the context of the mix. So this is obviously the end of the track. It's really sort of building up. We've got the guitars, the ukulele, everything's coming in. Now I'm going home. Now I'm going home. Now I'm going home. And there you go. Now what you will notice here is that there's a lot of automation on all these tracks. All that's really doing here is fading them out at the end. So, sorry, it's nothing particularly interesting that's going on there. Don't move the track, Pete. It's really just fading out those guitars at the end so that they sort of tail off nicely. So that's our guitars, our bass sound. If we go back to the start of the track here, let's solo out that bass. And let's have a look at the processing we have on the bass. Got just a compressor and the EQ for the bass. We've actually got the bottom end going down with this track. And again, if you go back to my top 10 tips video, let's just stop that bass. One of the things that I did originally was to really boost up the bass on some of the bass instruments, and when I then listened to it on speakers after using sort of my iPhone earbuds for the mixing process, it sounded boomy as all. So what I needed to do is come back in here and actually reduce some of the bass, and the main reason for that is that when you're recording a bass, and in this case I used one of these bass cabs, or I think this was the DI, was it? Yeah. What it's actually doing, we're already putting compression on there, and you can see I've even turned down the bass here because there's already EQ, there's already compression on here. It's already applying a lot of processing from the actual instrument itself. So if you put a whole lot of processing on the track as well, in the way of the EQ, then it's going to sort of double up and you're not going to get a good sound out of that. So bass, quite simple, quite a simple bass line and quite simply recorded. Let's have a look at piano. So as I mentioned, and as you heard at the start, the piano riff took a while for me to sort of work out what it was, but it eventually sounded like this throughout most of the track. So that's just complementary, because in the mix it sounds like this. Take my time, 'cause now I'm on my way home. So it just helps add that rhythm, that da 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 at the end of each line, which when the vocals are singing that as well, it kind of complements that. And then when the vocals aren't there, it just keeps that theme and that pattern of the melody. So it's a harmony instrument, but it's kind of complementing the melody throughout the track as well. Let's look at the vocals now. So I did mention that we had two vocals here which are actually identical, and one of them was I basically recorded this one first, wasn't particularly happy with it, or there were some parts that I didn't love, recorded it again, had them both on at the same time, and went, oh, that actually sounds okay. So I've put one volume right down and then the other one up. So here's the lead vocal alone. Traveling all so long, been a hard road. And then if we add in this second vocal. Traveling all so long, been a hard road, seeds of... So it's just a little bit thicker. You've just got a little bit of that, almost a delay sound in the parts where the notes are not the notes, but they're not lined up perfectly in terms of the timing, and that actually gives it a little bit more of a thick sound. Look, the Beatles have been not doing it for 50 years, but the Beatles did this a lot. A lot of bands, a lot of singers use this tactic because it just thickens up that vocal without adding a lot of processing. You're just adding a second occurrence of that vocal. So if we look at the processing that we have on these vocals, again, very similar, very simple. We've got a compressor, we've got some reverb, and we've got some EQ. So EQ is just rolled down the bottom end. The mids have been pushed a little bit around that 500k, and then the trebles had a bit of a boost. And I think it's pretty much the same processing on here as well, with just slightly different compression settings because that wanted to sit just underneath a little bit. The background vocals here, come back out of there, and we'll turn that on. So there's not a whole lot of background vocals, just a few little harmony parts like this, which by themselves sound quite ordinary, but when you put them in the context of the mix. Now I'm on my way home. And yes, you can barely hear them, to be honest. But again, it's just one of those things that adds a little bit of a texture piece to some of those parts. Let's hear another part here. This is a little bit embarrassing hearing these vocals because they're obviously in a falsetto voice and they don't sound great by themselves, but that's all right. That one sounds great. Let's play that with the mix. Heading back to home, so I've gone. And again, you can barely hear it. It's really just sitting under there. I could probably have even brought that up a little bit more, but it's just providing a little bit more of a texture piece and a little bit of that top end on the vocals there. Okay. Last but not least is the drums. So I could probably do an entire video on using drummer, and I probably will at some stage. But if we jump into our drummer here, you can see I've used the drummer tool, and I need to stop moving audio like that. So actually, let's go back out and solo before we jump in there, because we can't solo from that screen, which is a bit of a pain. So we'll solo, we'll jump into the drummer, and so this is what I've asked Mason to play throughout the first verse here. And you can see there that I've got the settings here. It's right in the middle there, sort of simple, and between simple and complex, soft and loud. We've got medium amount of fills here. Got this kick and snare pattern, which is what I wanted here. The Pendleton is the type of rhythm. And we're up here on the ride and the snare. So that's what's got that sound. And when we hit the chorus, we'll hit over here, you can see we change a little bit, but not too much. We add in this shaker as percussion. And then as we come back into here, we're now over here on the hi-hat. And there's that little rest spot. So it took me a while to work out when I was first using drummer how to actually have a section with no drummer. You literally just have nothing there. In fact, let's go back and see where this is actually in the mix so you get some context of this. If we come back and unsolo, go back to our drummer. So this section here. Lord, I know I felt some regrets. Now it's time. And you can hear there I've moved another track around. I do this every time I do one of these videos. I've moved a track somewhere. I can hear one of the guitars that's in the wrong spot. There it is. Hopefully that's back in the right spot now. Close enough. I'll fix it up later. Let's come back to the drummer. So we'll solo him again and go back to tap and tap. So as we come towards the end of the song here, you can see that I haven't made a lot of changes through here. So all I've really done is moved it. I've now got a little bit more complex as we're moving in. So I'm sort of building on the song. So a few more fills, a little bit more of a complex rhythm. And then through the chorus part, just kept it very light, and then it'll stop here. I'll let it have a kick drum there. And then we're going to come in here, and this last section is that final chorus. So I've got it complex. I'm letting him do fills out the wazoo. Got the shaker back in, back on the ride cymbals. You can hear Mason's going nuts there. So again, some people will just sort of frown upon that and say using drummer is not really a way to get drums onto your track. It absolutely is, and it's a pretty simple way, and it's actually quite powerful as well. So simple and powerful at the same time, because you do have control over it. You don't have exact control, but you get a good sound. If you're like me, you don't play drums, but you know a little bit about what you want in your song, you can set the parameters and get it sounding good. So that is the song Home. Please check it out on the EP if you haven't had a listen already. You can listen to the song and all tracks in their entirety, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, wherever good music is played, or any music is played. So thanks again if you've stuck with me throughout these 5 videos. Thank you very much. If this is the first one you've watched, feel free to go back and check out the back catalogue of videos as well. Thanks again for your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.